guys, it's Emily. Happy Sunday. Thank you for joining us this week. Woohoo, week 9, a delight. We're getting there. I know it's a chaotic week with midterms and Thanksgiving and all that. So thanks for taking this time to really reflect on yourself and your faith and connect more with God on an intimate level. So I think this is super valuable and I hope you get something out of this. So just know I'm going to go through the message in her chapter in her book, and then you can talk more intimately with your small groups and connect with them. But as always, know that I'm here for you if you'd like to talk deeper and want to connect, so do not hesitate to reach out. So week 9 is all about thorns, and this focuses on 2 Corinthians 10 through 12. And all in all, this is really the premise of how God is intimately close to all of us. And when we're going through hardships and struggles, we need to rely and look to God, and he wants us to lean on him. So I'm just going to give a little context and background on 2 Corinthians. So it's the first of 2 letters. So 1 Corinthians, 2 Corinthians, written by Paul. And Paul is a man of God, and he's focused on spreading the good news of the gospel. So Paul definitely is somebody who wants the best for people and wants people to know about God's truth. So 2 Corinthians was this letter of Paul's to reassure the church of his love for the Corinth people, while also defending his ministry and God's truth. So this focuses on Paul giving the church insight of what they did wrong and misunderstood about God's truth, and why he felt the need to defend the standards of Christ-like living, so that they can live their best lives and they can grow their faith. Because they didn't want to really hear what Paul was saying and how they're in the wrong, because people always don't like to be told when they're wrong. Still nowadays, right? You don't like to hear that. But the Corinthian Christians want to listen to other teachers who promise worldly blessings instead of being told they are wrong. So if they listen to these false teachers, they sort of think that they had favor from God, which is in stark contrast of Paul's teachings, which is speaking boldly about the truth. So Paul wrote 2 Corinthians as a letter to remind the Corinth people of what Jesus did on the cross for them. And he wanted to remind them that these worldly pleasures of health, wealth, power were not the desires of their heart, but that Jesus is. And the Corinthian Christians were simply seeking out what they wanted to hear, instead of the truth that they needed to hear, while also looking for false teachers to justify what they wanted for themselves. And I think this is really relatable to our lives and how we look to false teachers in so many ways that we might not even acknowledge and realize, like with everything being so technological, definitely going through social media so consistently, scrolling through the news about our society, watching TV, listening to radio, podcasts, you're consumed by all these different false teachers. So learning how to discern what is a false teacher can be very impactful for you. So back to Paul, instead of boasting about himself, Paul boasted about all of his sufferings and weaknesses. And he endured a lot, such as how he was persecuted, beaten, whipped, imprisoned for proclaiming Jesus as Messiah. Paul went through many, many hardships, and he emphasized how these circumstances where he chose to declare the goodness of God were super impactful, and that was the best part. So he understood how suffering is part of life, and suffering's here to stay. It's not going to go away. We're all going to have our own problems. But enduring it for the sake of spreading the gospel to others made it worthy of boasting. So 2 Corinthians is a letter about our faith and placing all of our trust and hope in God. And even though trusting our strength and pride by ourselves can be a lot easier, safer, more familiar, leaning into God is where we're going to have the most success and where we're going to truly thrive as Christians. So after all that 2 Corinthians background, I want to dive deeper into the thorn aspect. So you're probably wondering, why is this week even called Thorns? So that's what we're going to talk about. So being a devout follower of God, Paul received many visions and revelations from God that made him very tempted to boast about it and want to tell everybody, because it was so overwhelming and remarkable. Like, think about you seeing all this and getting all this insight. Like, you'd want to share it. But God gave Paul a thorn to keep him humble and keep him from being conceited about these visions. So God used this thorn to guard him from the sin and keep him humble, so he wouldn't be bragging to everybody and wouldn't let the sin consume him. And Paul didn't really understand the concept of that thorn, and he asked God to take it away 3 times, but God did not take it away. God kept that thorn in his life, and the purpose of this thorn was to prevent the potential sin in his life, not to punish him for the sin, but to prevent it from happening. And we're all going to experience hardships and sufferings, and this is acknowledged throughout these verses, but the good news is that similar to you and I, our weaknesses as humans always points to our need for God's strength and help, and Paul highlights how God is on our side, and in him, we don't need anything. He'll work things out for our good, and then that leads to us boasting what makes us weak. And I wanted to share some powerful verses because this has really gotten me through a lot. So definitely the part where God says to Paul, "My grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness." This shows how Paul was content in enduring his thorn, because he knew that things of this world are temporary, that this thorn will not last forever, and that he knows that Jesus is there for him, and Jesus wants the best for him, and that's the greatest treasure of it all. And Paul also says, for when I am weak, then I am strong. So when we are weak, God is strong. So think about that next time that you're going through a thorn, that looking to God when you're weak, that God is strong, God's there for you. And this is discussed in the book through Sabrina's Thorns story, and she discusses her lifetime experiences with chronic illnesses, and how that physically and mentally drained her and took a big toll on her life. And I know we're all unique individuals, and we all experience our own trials and hardships through these past 18 to 22 years of life. So I wanted to highlight one that we all have in common. And I know you're probably sick of hearing about it, but my thorn kind of stems from it, so bear with me. But it's our experience in being college women dealing with COVID-19 and this pandemic. I know life is so different now, and college life is extremely changed. So I'm sure you've all had negative ways, though, personal to you and your life individually, that has been affected by this pandemic. So whether that's having a family member or friend get diagnosed or become infected with COVID, having more anxiety and stress about this whole situation, dealing with personal mental health issues, having your routine in life be completely flipped upside down, trying to overcome the setbacks that this virus brought into you, or anything else that you can think of, this pandemic and quarantine has been a struggle for us all in one way or the other. So even though you've endured these struggles or problems, they're not done. But even though maybe you could be going through them right now, know that God does not love you any bit less. He will never love you less, because God knows the pain you're experiencing and is there for you ultimately. And this is evident in how Jesus died on the cross for us, like a painful, physically awful death. So he truly understands their pain and struggle, since he was fully human and he is fully God. So he really does get it. I want to talk about how my thorn, so for me personally, quarantine really negatively affected my mental state. I consider myself such an extrovert, so I get so much energy off of being with other people, and thrive when I'm so busy and doing so much and have such a packed schedule and love being around people. So having to be completely by myself left me very confused. I've never been so independent and individual ever. Granted, the whole country, the whole world, but I've never experienced that. So that left me really confused and struggled with understanding who I actually was. So quarantine made me independent in a way that really made me evaluate and look deep down and who I was, and really look at my heart and my soul and truly figure out myself. And it opened my eyes of how I was getting caught up with the worldly pleasures of being so invested in school, having such a great social life, kind of putting God on the back burner and kind of neglecting him, and just living my typical life of being a college student and not putting all my focus on him. So during this reflection, I was all alone, so I turned to God, and I cannot say that I don't know what I would do. I don't know what I would have done if I didn't. That period of time has significantly impacted myself mentally, emotionally, physically, and most importantly, spiritually. And I can just proudly say that my faith has grown so much from that. Like, that was such a mindset struggle of mine. That was really difficult to go through that period, but I feel closer to God in ways that I've not felt prior. I find myself loving the mornings where I get to read the Bible, do my devos. That's highlight of my day. I find myself praying and talking to God so many times during the day, like he's my best friend, and it's so natural and not forced. I find myself wanting to focus on my faith and make better decisions for my own mindset, my heart, my body. And I find myself wanting to learn more about God and about my faith, and listening to podcasts and sermons, and acknowledging that and living my life like that. But most importantly, I find myself genuinely joyful with having the Spirit live in me, which is something that I can't say that I had earlier. So I came to realize that the quarantine season of loneliness and uncertainty that deeply scared me and was super frightening made me very peaceful with God's loving hands protecting me and there for me. So just like Paul with his thorn, we need to reflect and notice how the pain in our lives is not a punishment from the Lord, but instead the suffering that points to his glory. So we may not always understand the purpose or meaning behind our struggles. Like, definitely during quarantine, I was so upset with my college experience being ruined, having to be all alone. But now, looking back, I can see how that was part of God's plan. So we can trust that God sees the full picture, and he always does want the best for you, and he does have a plan for you. So that season where I endured difficult mental battles was a season where I learned and connected with God the most. And I learned to look to him before anything else, and I deepened my trust and faith in his grace and mercy more than I ever had before. So just because I had that remarkable experience, that doesn't mean that my struggles will not end, and they won't ever end for you either. That's life, and I've been tested with life kind of getting back in the groove a little bit. So these aspects that I feel like I got over when I was like so engrossed with the Lord, it's getting back to normal. But so it's hard. There's temptations, but I feel like I personally have that firm foundation and knowledge grounded in my spirit to remind me that God is near and his presence will get me through the dark times to come. So the temporary feelings that I had are overshadowed by my trust and my faith, and will forever show me how to always need Jesus. So when I get down about this, or when I see myself going back to my past habits, I have a firm foundation. So just know that all we need is Jesus, because yes, we're all going through this pandemic together. We all have our different struggles, but remember that Jesus is always there when you're going through your own personal hardships and endeavors. So you're not alone in your suffering, and I just cannot reiterate that enough. If you're going through hardships right now, as always, know the Delight family, we're here for you. We want the best for you, and we'd love to talk more if you want to connect and chat at a more intimate level about this. So do not ever hesitate to reach out. But also, this is a really good time for you to lean into God and invite Him to work in your circumstances through prayer. Simply just talking to God, inviting Him in your heart can really help as well. And I've seen that in my life, and I know others can testify that as well. But during the small group time, if you're willing to open up to your small group tonight more, I'd really encourage you to speak out and discuss the thorns in your life. Obviously, this pandemic is one that we can all relate and discuss. But if you want to open up, you can talk about anything, no matter how big or how small, no matter whether it's mental, physical, spiritual. Simply just reflect and discuss it, because it's so great to be able to connect and talk it out with others. And honestly, you'd be surprised how similar your thorn may be to others who are actually going through something very similar that you had no idea about. So please remember that no matter what you're going through, Jesus fought for you and understands your pain and is there for you and will get you through it. So I want to leave you with 2 Corinthians 4:16-18. So therefore do not lose heart, though outwardly we are wasting away, yet inwardly we are being renewed day by day. For our light and momentary troubles are achieving for us an external glory that far outweighs them all. So we fix our eyes not on what is seen, but on what is unseen, since what is seen is temporary, but what is unseen is eternal. So just think about that. I hope you can connect to this in one way or the other, and I just hope you have an amazing start to your week. Good luck with the midterms and power through, because you're almost there, and just know that I'm always here for you if you need anything, and I'd love to talk more about this. So I'm sending all my love and blessings to all you guys. So, mwah. Bye guys, thank you.